So here's one more example where we can try the three methods. Our first method, the zero property, we need to factor this and then set those pieces equal to 0. The problem is 2x squared plus 6x minus 5 does not factor. You can try to think of two numbers that multiply together to get negative 10 and add up to 6, but you just can't find a pair. The zero property will not work to solve this particular quadratic. That doesn't mean that this quadratic doesn't have an answer. So we are going to move on to the quadratic formula. The beauty of the quadratic formula is that method always works. I'm going to say that one more time because if you are going to be really, really good at a method, the quadratic formula is the method you want to really have down because it always works. Okay, so to use our quadratic formula, I'm going to identify A, which is 2, B is 6, and C is negative 5. Substituting these values into the quadratic formula, our x is going to equal negative b, so negative 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So 2 times 2. Let's simplify a bit. So we have negative 6 plus or minus the square root. 6 squared is 36. And negative 4 times 2 times negative 5 is going to be plus 40. All over 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay. And then when we simplify the radicand, 36 and 40 make 76, which is not a perfect square. This is the correct answer per se, it's just not simplified. So we have got a bit of simplifying to do. This 76 is where we want to start simplifying. When you simplify a root, you want to rewrite that number in factored form, and so 76 is 4 times 19, so that's 2 times 2 times 19, all over 4. When you're simplifying a root, when you have a pair of numbers, you can take one of those numbers out front. So that's going to give us negative 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 19 all over 4. We do have this simplified a bit more, but there is still more simplifying to do. In the numerator, there is something in common. They're both even, so I'm going to factor out a positive 2, leaving me with negative 3 plus or minus root 19 all over 4. Now that we've factored the 2 out of both terms, we're going to cancel. So the final answer here is going to be negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 19 all over 2. This answer is simplified and it's also correct. There are a lot of ways that you could write this. You might find negative 3 over 2 plus or minus root 19 over 2. Or you might want to write the two solutions separately and say negative 3 plus root 19 all over 2 and negative 3 minus root 19 all over 2. But it's a really concise way to write it by using that plus or minus. Okay, so next we want to solve this same equation with our graphing calculator. Now let's use the graphing calculator method to solve 2x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0. All of the terms are already on the same side of the equal sign, so we're just going to replace the 0 with y. Next, we're going to head over to Desmos.com to graph this parabola. Once I have entered the equation in the top left-hand rectangle, the parabola appears, and I want to find the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are currently highlighted in gray, so I'm going to click each one of them, and the decimal version of the x-intercepts appear. The solution using the graphing calculator method is x equals negative 0.679 and x equals 3.679. Now let's compare the solutions that we got using the graphing calculator with the solutions that we got using the zero property and the quadratic formula. When we tried using the zero property, we ran into some problems because the 2x squared minus 6x minus 5 wouldn't factor. So we weren't able to use the zero property to find the solution. Next, we used the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is fantastic because it always finds the answer. When we used the quadratic formula, we got the solutions 3 plus or minus the square root of 19 all over 2. The solutions from the quadratic formula look much different than the solutions that we got using the graphing method. The solutions from the quadratic formula are exact values. If we wanted to find the decimal equivalents of these exact values, we could use our calculator and find 3 plus the square root of 19, get an answer, and take that answer divided by 2. Similarly, we could take 3 minus the square root of 19 and get a number, and take that number and divide it by 2. The decimals that our calculator would give us are a bit longer and a little more accurate than the decimals we got using the graphing calculator. Regardless if the solution has 3 numbers after the decimal or 7 numbers after the decimal, they are both rounded versions of the exact values 3 plus or minus the square root of 19 over 2. If we wanted to find the exact value answer to 2x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0, we would have to use the quadratic formula.